Charity excellence. And this AI best practice video is about understanding and managing AI risk. First, looking at the legislation that's there to protect us. Governments are desperate to not be left behind. And companies are investing absolutely eye-watering amounts of money in a race that they can't afford to lose. So what's underpinning it? If you look at the EU AI Act, it is really good. It is risk-based. It's about excluding things that are too high risk. I think this is the way to do it. The problem is it only really works if all of the governments and all of the companies do it. So the risk for the EU is that the AI innovation will not be invested into the EU. It'll be invested elsewhere, and ultimately they will lose out. In the US, President Trump has rescinded President Biden's AI safety rules, and the UK and the US declined to sign the Paris AI Summit declaration. And the grounds for doing that is that applying those controls would stifle innovation, and that's about growth. It is an entirely personal view, but the government is clearly absolutely desperate for growth, and therefore, in all likelihood, they're going to make it very easy for AI companies to invest and to innovate here, which means that the safety rules will not be there. If those rules are not there, then it is up to us to ensure that we protect our charities and our beneficiaries. There is the online safety bill, for example, pretty much focused on children and women. And one of the things it requires you to do is to carry out a risk assessment. So it's a good job you're watching this video. But for those that say, well, we don't do AI, 2 points. It'll be ubiquitous. So you will be using it. It'll be in your smartphone. It'll be in Excel. It'll be absolutely everything. And even if you don't do stuff like laptops, it's going to be there on social media. And you are required to keep your people safe from things like slop and deepfakes. We are all vulnerable. This video is about what those risks are and how you can respond to them. So the current and near-term list. Privacy. The AI companies are scraping virtually everything. That will include your website, the imagery on your website, anything you input into AI. Generally, unless it's a closed system or you've opted out. If you've opted out, there may well be a 200-page terms and conditions behind it. Personally, I never enter anything into an AI system that I'm not prepared to have shared. So privacy is a major issue. Lots of arguments about that. And the legal issues. Who owns what? So if the AI scrapes my website on something, say like crypto fundraising, I own the copyright. If the AI then changes that, does the AI then own the copyright? Well, actually, I can't own copyright. And if NCVO then say, would you write me a guide on crypto fundraising we can publish on our website, and it uses my website as the source for that, and then NCVO rewrite it, possibly making it better, do they then own the copyright? And now I don't care. I just want our information out there. But you can see how that would matter to an awful lot of people. And when you're using AI, how can you be confident you're not using copyrighted material? The answer is you can't really. Disinformation. We've got disinformation now. We've got run-of-the-mill stuff from terrorism all the way through to abuse of women, etc. But we also have state bad actors attempting to undermine democracy, interfering in votes. What AI will do is enable that to be much, much more sophisticated, and it can generate it in far larger volumes. So this is going to be a significant risk. It's a risk in that it runs counter to the ethos of the sector. It is a risk to your beneficiaries. It is a risk to your charity. So someone like some of these online misogynists, what they say is fairly screamingly obviously not true, but you can then go to AI and say, I want you to take all this stuff I talk about that's complete rubbish people won't listen to, and I want you to turn that into emotionally engaging and compelling arguments that would be listened to by a young teenage boy, and it will. And if you say there are guardrails on things like ChatGPT and Copilot, there are also criminal GPT databases now that will do it for you. So this is a really big issue for us. Scams, again, they will become increasingly sophisticated. Again, there will be a lot more of them. And as ever, it will be the vulnerable who suffer most. And some of this stuff is very, very, very clever. Deepfake, clone voices, something like 25% of scams in the UK on the telephone are now AI voice clones. And discrimination. AI is not discriminatory. It is not misogynist. It is algorithms. But if the data set you choose is skewed or in some way discriminatory, that's what it will pick up. If you train it in a way that builds bias into the system, that can make it discriminatory. And we're not going to get away from this. There is a lady doctor at MIT Robotics, and what she's effectively said is when you see things like avatars of women that are highly sexualized, why are you surprised? Have a look at the internet. That's where it's coming from. Um, what AI is doing is reflecting ourselves back at us, and in many cases, it's not very pretty. That's why the AI has the guardrails. So discrimination is another issue that we need to think about. But there are less obvious ones. I've heard people saying AI imagery isn't authentic, our chief executive won't accept it, we're not going to use AI. To be brutally frank, if you look back to the internet revolution, I'm really old, I can remember it. Um, it will be like taking your laptop off you and your smartphone, switching your Wi-Fi off, giving you a biro and a diary, and send you back to work to draft letters, just like it was in the late 1970s. Except that will happen much, much more quickly. So if you're not using AI, you're already on the hind foot and you will lose out. Loss of human agency. This is not often talked about. If you strip people of their ability to make decisions, it is highly damaging. So allegations have been made against people like Amazon, where you will do this in exactly the way I told you to, in this order, and there is no negotiation. There is nothing about it. You will just do what you're told. That is very damaging. It is also not a good way to work with AI. AI will work best when we deepen our relationship with the technology. That is, it's working with us and helping us. It is not in control. But there are increasing numbers of organizations that are using AI to monitor people on home working, etc. We cannot afford to lose human agency. That matters for the big charities, but it also matters in terms of how it impacts society and mental health and how that feeds back into demand on charity services. Dumbing down creativity. Yeah, obviously places like journalism, where we need people who are thinkers. If you take the average of the average, you get very average. So our AI bunnies can write very competent funding bids and they get the information out of you. It will never be as good as a human. The flair, the understanding of context, the insight, the innovation. It can't do that, no matter what the clever salesmen tell you. So my AI bunny can give you 20 fabulous fundraising ideas. What it can't do is tell you what the next brilliant fundraising idea will be because it doesn't know. It's taking the average off the internet. So loss of creativity we must safeguard against. Moral outsourcing, again, not something that's generally talked about. In a famous case in America, one of the big car companies designed a car. Unfortunately, when you were involved in a crash, the petrol tank exploded. Not good for the people driving the car. They were taken to court and they had to pay out extremely large amounts of damages. You designed it, you made a profit out of it, it went wrong, it's your fault. With social media, what we tend to get is kind of hand-wringing. It's really terrible that these groups spring up and that the young people are being encouraged to self-harm or consider suicide or view their bodies in an unnatural way, and that it's causing harm and damage to individuals. That's really terrible. And what moral outsourcing says, well, if you run these things and you've set them up and you're making billions out of them, then you're responsible for them. That's what the Online Safety Act is trying to do. The government is already coming under flack from the US, particularly the big tech. Will they back off on it? So moral outsourcing is if you bring an AI system in, you are responsible if it harms people. And my guess is 5 years from now, we'll be seeing public sector investigation, lots of hand wringing. It will be the usual lessons learned, and vulnerable people, or the Muslims, or Black people, or disadvantaged people will have been hurt because these systems were not set up properly, they were not explainable, etc. So that's not something we can deal with, but it's something to be aware of. And critical thinking. When you go down to Lidl's and you're making a choice between the curry or the pasta, you are exercising critical thinking. You're thinking about the calorie content, the nutrients, you're thinking about what your partner likes, whatever. But good critical thinking will get you the right choice. That matters just as much for the people that control nuclear weapons or are dealing with the Ukraine or are trying to find a way forward with Gaza. It is not something the human race can afford to lose. So if you say to Alexa, what's the weather like outside? And Alexa says, I think it will probably rain later in the afternoon, and you decide to take a coat. You have made a decision. You have exercised critical thinking based on that information. If you say to Alexa, do I need to take a coat? And Alexa says yes, Alexa has made the decision for you. You have just handed control over. It's a very fine line, but it's a huge deal. So when we work with these things, you will see all of the Charity Action material, no matter what you've got in there. It says at the end of the day, this stuff does not go out without human sign off. It is not something we can afford to give away. We just need to make sure that we're making critical thinking ours and not the machines. And Robot Wars can't have an AI risk webinar without them. The Paperclip Maximizer is a famous thought experiment from the 1980s where they said to the machine, your job is to maximize paperclips. It eventually worked out that the human beings wouldn't want a world full of paperclips, so they were going to get in the way of its prime directive, and it off to human beings. All bit fun, good laugh. Artificial general intelligence is when the machines can begin to think for themselves, when they reach what is known as singularity and they become smarter than we do. Are they evil? No, not unless we program them that way, obviously. So let me give you an example. Artificial intelligence, I would like you to run the NHS better. Vastly complex system. Automatically, it's rescheduling operations, it's setting things up, it's making ambulances distribute far more efficiently. It's great. Except it's worked out what the politicians all know but won't say, which is there are not enough resources to give everyone the medical support that they need. And he goes, well, what will I do about that? Well, it is accepted within the NHS that if you send an ambulance and the choice is a young person or an old geezer like me, you send the ambulance to the young person because their whole life is in front of them, and therefore, arguably, there is more value in saving them. Can't disagree with that. That's fair enough. So it goes, all right, well, if I haven't got enough, what I need to do is I need to invest this in the youngsters because that's more important, which means the terminally ill people and the really old people who are already not getting the healthcare they need, get less of it. What are you going to do about that? Well, whenever one of my bunnies becomes so ill that it can't go on, I will take the bunny to the vet and I will have the bunny euthanized. So the AI goes, well, it's not really about health, it's about quality of life. And if these people are being robbed of all of their quality of life, best thing to do is euthanize them, isn't it? And you go, did you just say top my granny? And of course, we know that would upset you. So what we do is we make sure you don't get told. And you go, that's inhuman. And well, of course it's inhuman. It's a machine. What did you think it was going to do? So I've just made all that up, but it's an example of what you call goal divergence, where the machine is doing exactly what we wanted the machine to do in terms of objective, but actually that objective isn't really what we wanted. We did not want the machine to kill your granny. And that is, in a kind of nutshell, what the concerns around this are. Most people are thinking, some people are arguing that AGI will never arrive. Machines are not capable. Other people are saying, yeah, we do think it will. There's a whole spread of thinking on it. But in general, it seems to be, yes, this is very important. It is not something we can ignore, but it is in all probability years away. And turning to risks that are very specific to us, I think the two biggest AI risks for the charity sector are ignorance and inaction. We didn't know we had to do it. And although we've been hearing about it, we haven't actually done it. I think those are the two biggest risks we face. AI roadkill. In times of huge change, this is a time of huge change. No one is arguing about that. There are winners and there are also losers. I would much rather you weren't one of the losers. Digital moats. I've been banging on about this since 2021, post-COVID, about digital fundraising. I've stolen it from Warren Buffett and his economic moats. Digital moats are where you develop a capability that is so overwhelming and dominant that you force the competition out of the market. They can't get in. I think there is a risk of digital moats being created by super large charities. Loss of trust. You don't click links that come in emails. You don't automatically open documents anymore because there's just so much of that stuff out there. Clone charity websites, fairly standard. Some of them are really good. With deep fakes and misinformation and scams, we will face an onslaught, much more sophisticated and a lot more of it. And trust is absolutely pivotal for us. So I think this is a major issue for us. And risks for the vulnerable. Part of that is as AI systems are brought in, they will switch off legacy systems because they're not nearly as effective and they're extremely costly. There are people, and we care for the most vulnerable, who will never use an AI system. There is a risk that they will simply fall off the end and not be noticed. And we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And the other one for me is around us as a risk with our donors. If you remember Olive, the British Heart Foundation, umpteen years ago, who committed suicide, hounded by direct mail. Even the best organizations like BHF can make mistakes. We all learn from that. AI will massively, massively change how we deploy things like CRM data. And it will be using things like social engineering. It will be much more sophisticated and far greater scale. If you make the mistake of saying to the bot, I want you to maximize the fundraising income, it will. If it can do that by taking vast amounts of money off vulnerable people, it's doing exactly what you told it to, just like the paperclip maximizer. Are we thinking about this? I haven't heard anyone. We've gone and done all the protocols. There are ways to do it, etc., etc. That's one I think of. I think that is a significant risk because there is no overarching guidance on it. There are likely to be others. So we must remember that what we do must not coerce or exploit the vulnerable either. So, ignorance and inaction. This is our benchmarking survey of 2024. There are all the areas that we targeted that we thought were key areas to be thought about, and the percentages down the middle are the percentages of charities that rated themselves 1 out of 10. On the right is all the stuff that we've produced that you can use to fix these areas. Essentially, in every single area, the best we could say is a third of charities rated themselves 1 out of 10 in that area. We are woefully unprepared. We need to deal with that. AI roadkill. This is Kodak. Kodak were the company for photography, wet film. They were a leading pioneer of digital imagery. And they didn't think it was that important because the sheer quality of the stuff was very, very poor. Not like it is now, but then it was very, very poor. They didn't really see this as something. They went bankrupt. They said, we are the leading photographic company in the world, and there is nothing as good as our wet film. That was the right answer. It was the wrong question. The question was, what do your customers want? And they went, oh my God, do you mean I can take a picture at my son's birthday party and send it to his granny in Australia on Facebook 2 minutes later? Yes. And that's what happened. So we sit here and say, well, we do this. It's incredibly high quality. It's absolutely brilliant. AI could never replace that. Again, right answer, wrong question. The question is, what do your beneficiaries want? And if they want help right now and you can't see them until next week, if they haven't got any money and you need them to go all the way across town, they haven't got the bus fare, or all of those kind of issues, you may find that those using AI will be way ahead of you. We have a toolkit. It allows you to ask yourself all the questions you need to ask about things like cost, etc., and it enables you to work out how much of a risk this is to you and what you can do about it. What I wouldn't do is nothing, because that's inaction. Digital modes. In 2021, I had an article in Charity Digital where I talked about digital modes. And online fundraising had absolutely rocketed during COVID, and everybody was really pleased. And I looked at the numbers and I went, but the people that trousered all the money were almost all large charities because they're very capable. They've got very sophisticated digital teams. They were able to exploit it in a way that many other charities simply couldn't. At the time, I talked about the risks around AI. I was kind of thinking more like blockchain. I didn't see generative AI more than anyone else, but I said AI is a risk. Cancer Research has invested 24 million into transforming its digital fundraising. If that's how much they've spent, how much do you think they're going to get back? And there's all the other large charities. They already get 80 to 90% of the sector income. They don't need to get that much more to take a huge section of what everyone else gets. And with these, you can use social engineering. You can tailor things very, very closely to what people want. You know exactly when to send things out, how much to ask them for. It is going to be extremely sophisticated and it will revolutionize fundraising. But if they are the only people that benefit from this, the risk to the middle ground is that you get squeezed out. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to work and develop systems to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And trust in an AI-enabled world. So we need our beneficiaries to trust us so that they will come to us and use our services. And we need our supporters and our donors and the general public to trust us, to be willing to give us the funding we need to run those services. And they do. We're very highly trusted. But the world is changing very, very rapidly. Misinformation, undermining the values that we believe in, damaging our campaign messages, drowning them out with volume and slop. Scams. How do I know that I can trust that this is actually the charity's website? When they phone me up and talk to me about a charity, how do I know it's a charity? When I get that newsletter with the link, I'm not sure I should click that link because I just don't believe in clicking links anymore. And they pose a direct threat that nobody will trust anyone. And the exploitation and the exploitative behavior will impact directly on our beneficiaries. People from marginalized communities being subject to misinformation attacks, being subject to scam attacks, being subject to deepfake pornography and material like that. Charities ourselves under increasing attack as the scammers try to get through and get you to transfer money when they take the imagery from your website and turn that into deepfake pornography, when your cybersecurity isn't good enough and they breach it. And suddenly all that data on vulnerable people and their credit cards is lost. And it's only a matter of time until someone appears on the front page of the Daily Mail. And if people start saying, can I trust the charity with my personal information? Can I trust the charity with my financial details anymore? Can I trust their website? Can I trust their emails? If we lose that trust, we're kind of snookered because that's fundamentally what we work on. So what are we going to do about that? What I've done, and I may be wrong, I often am, is I've created the Charity Future Framework. It's online, it's automatic, it's very quick, it's very simple to use, and it will do everything for you. So what do I think we need? Demonstrable ethical practices. You can't just say we're ethical. Trust isn't something you can claim. Trust is something other people give to you. And the only thing that matters is how they see you. And that puts an onus on us to demonstrate to them that in actual fact, you can trust us. So, do you have an ethical policy? Are you clear on what ethics is? Because I can tell you, in terms of imagery and the new AI imagery and things around that, the goalposts have moved. In some cases, we're not even quite sure where they've gone yet. And lots of people have got no idea that they've moved. You need to think, what is the basis of our ethics? Are we clear? Do we communicate that well? And systems to create and maintain trust. Why should I trust you? If you can't give me reasons why I should trust you, I don't think I will. Okay, what is it you do that builds trust amongst your stakeholders and the public? You need to understand that. You need to articulate that. Data protection is going to be a major issue in an AI-enabled world because of the attacks and the way things will work. How good is your data protection? Can you show people that it's safe and that it's effective and it's compliant? And allied to that, cybersecurity. When you get the voice clone attack, I've had one, or the video clone attack, the prompt injection attacks. How risky is your systems? Can we trust you with our credit cards and data? And do you have effective and safe procedures in an AI-enabled world? It's moving the goalposts. You need to change things like your social media policy, your imagery handling policy, your internal systems of control, financial control. We need to get up to speed. We need our people to know that they mustn't be entering certain things into AI systems. You can't just plug an AI system into the side of your CRM. That's not how it works. You need to be ready for this. This is the area that our automated tracking is telling us is the weakest area. There are issues around cybersecurity and data protection and stuff. Primarily, it's getting ready for AI. That's the biggest deal. That's why we created AI Ready. So if you log into Charity Excellence and you use Charity Excellence just by completing the health check system, you will in actual fact be audited against all of this. It will run a report for you. It will show you where you're weak. It will connect you to all of the resources and support that you need to get AI ready. You don't have to follow me. As I said, I make loads of mistakes anyway. But what I am saying is I bring you back to the two single biggest risks we have. Ignorance, people that don't know the goalposts have moved and that we need to do something about it, and inaction. AI has got nothing to do with me. It will not impact me. It will. So whatever you do, don't do nothing. Thank you for listening to me.